Okay, this is insane. God, this can be so abused. Look at this, now the Minotaurs are dead. And those were Hades Minotaurs, with 400 health points. Even the Colossi can die to it! Hi everybody, Automaton here. Today we're gonna analyze the god power Implode, with Atlas' unlockable meat in it, the Argus, as a special guest. Implode is, as of now, one of the most discussed god powers, with many players lamenting that it's too strong. Is a nerf really needed? Apparently so, because the recent patch just toned it down. But have players unlocked maximum implode potential yet? And how does implode even work to begin with? Implode is a mythical god power unlockable by Atlantean major gods, namely Gaia and Kronos, with the worship of the minor god Atlas. Atlas also gives you the Argus myth unit and a set of really nice upgrades. Since the day Retold released, implosions have caused great dread among players, who have seen their armies annihilated with just one click. Casting the god power conjures this big sphere, which I believe is supposed to be a black hole, that pulls enemy units inside and then explodes, damaging the buildings around it. Implode has changed quite a bit with the game releases, so let's see what the power used to be in the Titans expansion first, and then how they changed it in Retold. In the old game, the Summon Sphere had a pulling range of 25 game length units, which is far above what the in-game casting circle shows. The units would be pulled in at the speed of 2 to 3 per second, with the sphere increasing with mass as a black hole would. The pulled units per second will then slowly increase as time passed, and if the enemy army was very big, at some point the sphere will just get tired of waiting and say, you know what, screw this, I will suck them all at the same time. Because of the 25 length units range and the very slow pull mechanic, it was actually fairly easy to escape the pulling range if you were the one who cast it, while if it was cast on you and you had a big army, you could often escape the pull with half your units. Every pulled in unit will receive 200 hack damage and be immobilized in the center until the sphere exploded, sending all the pulled units flying. Despite there being no cap on the maximum damage to enemy armies, the pull speed and range made it easy to escape, effectively limiting the potential for extreme damage. Also, while 200 hack damage to every unit seems incredibly high, we have to consider that hack armor applied. This meant that high hack armor and high HP units, like hoplites, were damaged way less than low hack armor and low HP units, like archers. To make some examples, an Anubis had 200 life and 60% hack armor, only receiving 80 damage. Fully upgraded hoplites with about 160 life and around 50% armor would receive 100 damage each. Toxotes, with their 65 base health points and base hack armor of 15%, took 170 damage and stood no chance even when fully upgraded. The 200 hack damage would be applied to villagers as well, but damage on them was capped to 1000. This meant that, considering villager HP and armor, an implosion could kill 11 Greek full health villagers on average. But if the villagers were already damaged, the number of kills could increase. Theoretically, the power could have killed more than 600 1 HP villagers, like I showcased in this very old video. Raw villagers, with the skin of the rhino increasing their hack armor, will die less. The same is true for Atlantean hero villagers, since they all get the armory upgrades you research. A similar cap of 1200 HP worth of damage also applied to allied military units, and a smaller cap of 400 HP worth of damage applied to allied villagers. So, to recap, there was no max damage cap, but every unit would only get 200 worth of hack damage, never more, never less. Escaping the pool with some army was rather easy, but most of the army could still get pulled in, even if you reacted perfectly. Damage on villagers was limited. Damage on allied units was limited, but 1200 damage spread to your army is not something you wanted to endure, considering your army could have lower HP from enduring earlier fights, and that the max 3TC pop was 160, allowing very small armies. There was also damage to buildings, but I will not cover that for brevity's sake and because very little changed about it. All this meant that in the old game you could limit damage from enemies' implosions by upgrading your hack armor early, and was very common to do so. It also meant that under no circumstance you wanted your army to get pulled in the implosion you casted. Therefore, the power was always summoned far away from the caster's army. All things considered, the old implode was very simple, and simple was its usage. The only variables that impacted on damage and overall effectiveness was if the enemy units were pulled in or not, and the enemy's armory upgrades. In the new game, implode got quite a rework, and as a result, is now more complicated and needs to be used very differently. I will talk about the pre-patch implosion before and then how they changed it just some days ago. The in-game tooltip only shows very scarce info. It says it does massive damage and that it's more powerful when used around a lot of units. Luckily, there is a mod called Advanced Tooltips where user Logi, already known for helping Boyd with his overall patch in the old game, switched the VEG tooltips with actual, precise tooltips. Before looking at that, I did some testing myself, with an army of 30 hoplites and 30 toxotes, and quickly found that the casting position was heavily influencing results. Casting it in front of the hoplites yielded far better results than casting it behind the toxotes. Casting it near the toxotes killed all the toxotes, but left all the hoplites alive with half health. Casting it near the hoplites killed all of them, but 4 to 5 toxotes survived with half health. So, what was going on, and why such a big difference? As an ignorant player, I always summoned the sphere near the enemy archers, because I wanted to make sure that the killable units were surely pulled in, and I kinda wanted to cast it on the retreat path, to make sure the enemy army as a whole didn't escape, to get a better value out of the god power. But as it turns out, it is better to do the opposite, and cast the god power near the high HP units. Interestingly, the first units to get sucked into the sphere are the most damaged, so pulling in the hoplites first is indeed the correct play. This will ensure that both the hoplites and the toxotes are damaged enough to get killed, with little damage wasted in overkilling toxotes. This opens up some possibilities. For example, as the receiving player, you could try to switch the positions of your units to allow the high HP to be pulled in last. But apparently, the game decides the pulling order in the moment the rays are casted on the units. Therefore, changing the unit's location after they have a ray attached to them will not change the pulling order. However, there is still some use in this, as a unit very far away will need some time to actually arrive inside the sphere. Therefore, a unit who gets pulled second can still arrive at the center first. While trying it on some Hippicon, I quickly realized that they were damaged in multiples of 40, regardless of how much armor I gave to them. It was at this point that I remembered that the tooltip mod existed and was curious to see what Logi had written in it, so I went to download it. And let me tell you, that mod is amazing. It gives precise and extensive information, while being as concise as possible. It is definitely a recommend for any experienced player, although it can be a bit overwhelming to a new player. Of course, the entry for implode is special, considering how complicated the god power is. And let me tell you, it didn't disappoint one bit. It is a literal wall of text. The tooltip starts by saying it sucks up 8 units per second, and that the pull radius is 25, but you can escape it if you are 40 away from the sphere before it pulls you in. Then it proceeds to say that units take 40 divine damage upon entering the sphere, and again after every second passed in it. For those who don't know what divine damage is, it is damage that is not affected by the unit's armor and resistances. 40 divine damage will always result in 40 less HP for the units who receive the damage. Now we only need to test it on our beloved Hippicons.
Sir, after the curse incident, we as a people decided to form an ethics committee to judge some of the shady things that happen in your kingdom.
Very cute. And
after extensive discussions, we reached the conclusion that imploding Hippicon to analyze how our world works is inhumane.
Inhumane? Don't you see I'm a giant robot? No, you clearly don't understand. Hippicons deserve this, okay? They're murderous war machines. Think about how many villagers Hippicon have killed since the game was released. Some of those villagers were women too. And who knows, if the game had villager children, they would probably kill them as well. Those villagers were working really hard to build a better society, but had to die because those sadist psychopaths longed for blood. Look, as a matter of fact, right now, as we speak, one of them is terrorizing your parents. Man, seeing villagers around gold mines really angers me somehow.
Paul, what are you doing? Didn't we talk about this?
Yeah, if I can't be around villagers and gold mines without murdering them, then I should avoid gold mines altogether. But this is literally a dwarven gold mine! I wasn't here yesterday. How was I supposed to know? My condolences.
Did you just summon a gold mine to prove a point?
Great then. Now that we have ethical issues worked out, let's cut to the chase. Testing shows that, as I hoped, the tooltip from Loggy is inaccurate, as if damage isn't applied every second, but rather much slower. If you think about it, the average implosion is 7 to 8 seconds long, and the first unit that gets inside the sphere, since they stay inside for the whole time, should be damaged by 40 plus 40 times 7. That equals to 320 HP, but luckily, for some obscure reason, the god power is currently underperforming, with 4-second long implosions only dealing 40 damage, and 8-second ones not being able to kill Hippicon under these test circumstances. I was getting kind of stumped. I tried many combinations, and to me it seemed like there was a 2 or 3 second interval during which the sphere did no damage at all. And it happened right at the end of the pulling, right before the shockwave. The more time passed, the clearer it became that I couldn't solve this in the editor, and my worst fear was about to be realized. I had to delve into the game's code. In case it's not obvious, I know nothing about it, so please bear with me. You can and are encouraged to correct any mistakes I might make in the comments. The first look quickly confirms that Loggy took the info for his tooltip mod directly from the game code, as all the information is here, including the supposedly wrong 40 divine damage per second. The code for implode is incredibly long and has many entries, so I will only look at the things we need. The first things that catch my attention are the 3 proto that are summoned by the god power. For simplicity's sake, We're gonna refer them as units, which is not a big misinterpretation, as in the old game the implosion sphere was literally a game unit you could select and place in the editor. The last proto is called VFX implode pull effect, and is the ray-like effect that tracks which units are being pulled into the sphere. It exists purely for visual purposes, and is able to move with the target because it behaves like a projectile. Imagine an endless stream of very fast, zero damage projectiles being fired at the pulled units. That is the ray effect. An important thing about them is that when all the VFX implode pull effects die, yes, because they're units, the god power can move on to its explosion phase. The middle proto is called implode shockwave. This is the shockwave you see traveling after the explosion. It is actually a traveling unit with 600 crush damage that has an attack speed of 1 per second and an incredibly small attack range. It then dies after 35 length units. For reference, the visual cue and the pull range of the god power is 25. Therefore, the shockwave will still damage buildings outside the range indicator. The attack it performs on buildings is modified by the number of pulled units. It will increase by 10% for every unit pulled inside the sphere, peaking at 100% with 10 pulled units, which is 1200 total crush damage. This means that as long as at least 10 units are pulled inside the sphere, the implosion will always do max damage to the buildings around the sphere. The first proto is called implode sphere. This is our main protagonist, the sphere summoned by the god power. Not surprisingly, this unit uses a modified throw mechanic. For illustrative purposes, you can imagine the implosion sphere as a cyclops with infinite hands, waiting to grab all the pulled units at once and to throw them outside the sphere when it explodes. When the units are still being pulled, he can't throw them yet, so it will resort to clubbing all the nearby units for 40 divine damage each. What's actually happening behind the scenes is this: the units are pulled inside the sphere. The developers try to make us believe that the units disappear during this time. However, this is not true at all. In the old game, you could see the pulled units stuck at the center of the sphere, waiting for the explosion, and you could still select them. A common practice when suffering an implosion was to check the center to see how much of your army was going to survive, and adjust your strategy accordingly. Age of Mythology Retold handles things a little differently. Upon being pulled, the units become invisible and non-selectable, to make you believe that the units aren't there, while in fact they are. If you pay attention, you can clearly see your units attacking them inside the sphere. While they wait for the moment they'll all be grabbed and thrown, the units stuck in the center are greeted by our infinite-handed Cyclops, now wielding clubs and attacking all of them once every second, dealing 40 divine damage each time. Then, after all units are pulled inside the sphere, he will lose the clubs and finally be able to throw the units outside the sphere, making them visible and selectable again. The modified throw is kind of odd to me. You can see the code calling for the throw mechanic, but then overriding it with its own values. One of these is the hand attack dealing 40 divine damage, and the other is the throw itself. What I find odd is that the implosion throw code is packed with its own damage values for the throw. As you can see, the throw is supposed to do 50 hack damage and 50 crush damage. Here you can see, by comparison, the code for the throw on the Cyclops unit, which doesn't have the crush damage. For those who don't know how the Cyclops throw works, the throwing unit will land, dealing 65 damage to all enemy units that are 3 length units in range of the landing spot. According to the implode code, every landing unit should deal 50 hack damage and 50 crush damage on an area of 4 game length units. This is incredibly scary. Considering how many units the implosion can throw back, it will feel like a mini meteor cast at the end of it, utterly destroying anything that survived. Luckily, somehow this damage is never applied. Units are only damaged in multiples of 40, which is probably why Logi never mentioned this in the tooltip. Whether this is a bug or a scrap mechanic, what really interested me was the fact that the throw mechanic was used. If you ever witnessed a Cyclops throwing a unit, you have probably found out that the grabbed unit becomes non-selectable during all of the throwing animation. This is not the only change, as the unit becomes undamageable as well. This is probably because the devs didn't want units to die in the Cyclops' hands while they were performing the animation. It also explains why, in my tests, many units that were inside the sphere for 3 to 4 seconds received only 40 divine damage. Being the last units pulled in also means that the throw pre-explosion phase will begin as soon as you enter, giving you invincibility for those 2-3 seconds and leaving you very little time to suffer damage. To recap, an implosion has a pulling phase, in which units inside the sphere are invisible, unselectable, and rapidly damaged. A throwing phase, or pre-explosion phase, in which the units gain immunity to damage. And then the explosion phase, in which the units are launched out of the sphere. Now that we properly understand this god power, we can look for ways to maximize its value. It is evident that the only way to do it is by increasing the time of the pulling phase, as it is the only phase in which the units are damaged. This is usually done by casting the power on bigger armies, as the in-game tooltip suggested in the first place, or including your army inside the pulling area. Including your army is almost always favorable for you, as allied units only get damaged by 10%, and if properly cast, your units will be the last in the pulling priority anyway, receiving only 4 to 12 damage per unit. Since the sphere pulls an average of 8 units per second, every 8 units you add to the party will increase the pulling phase by 1 second. Therefore, those 8 units more are worth 40 divine damage to all the enemy units that are already inside the sphere. This is the main mistake of many users. You can see the caster's army looking at it from safety range.
I was expecting it to do a bit more damage as well.
But is casting it on bigger armies really the only way to increase the damage? As it turns out, if you've done your homework, it totally isn't. Let me present to you the fake escape. One thing people might overlook is that the damaging phase does not end when the last unit in priority is being pulled, but rather when all the units are inside the sphere. This means that if all to be pulled units are close to the sphere, the damaging phase will end sooner. On the contrary, if the last units in priority list are close to the border, they will prolong this phase, and all the units in the center will therefore receive additional damage. One consequence of this is that now escaping the area feels unfavorable. You may be saving some units, but you'll be increasing the time of the damaging phase, condemning your pulled units to certain death. If you're playing an all-out 1 vs 1 and the enemy implodes an area with less than 40 units, the perfect play would be to get a little closer to the center while continuing the fight. If the implosion is cast on very big 2-player armies on a team game, trying to run away with the lower priority units is still the better play. From the caster's perspective, performing the fake escape is an amazing way to increase the damage. You can cast implosion, then select the unit who's lower on the priority list and have it run to the pulling border without crossing it to escape. The escape border is 40 game length units away, and from there, the pulled units will need 3 to 4 seconds to reach the center, increasing the damage done to every unit by 120 or 160. There is absolutely no way for the defender to stop this, and damage can go as high as 400 for the first pulled units, as demonstrated here, where the implosion killed Hades Minotaurs, who have 368 HP. But even units with very high HP are not safe from implosions. With the help of an ally, you could, as a team, cast 2 implosions close to each other, causing them to fight for a central unit. This will not be resolved and extends the pulling phase to 1 minute, totaling 2,440 damage for every pulled unit, but cancelling the throw and explosion phase. 2,440 is enough damage to kill 1 or 2 armies of colossi. Or you can just get the enemy units stuck in a forest, or drown them in a pond of water. Yes, for some reason that actually works. Casting the implosion on the water will leave some survivors there, helplessly drowning. Casting it in a forest or cliff will leave them permanently stuck in place. This is particularly useful when the enemy army has a high HP unit, like a Colossus. This way you will both kill his army and disable the myth unit. While a Colossus could theoretically eat his way out of the forest, a normal implosion doesn't leave them damaged enough to be able to do that. Eerily enough, drowned bodies never disappear. You do not recognize the bodies in the water. Before going on, I am sorry to inform you that your YouTube may be broken. Luckily, I have discovered a fix for you. Nearly 90% of YouTube viewers nowadays are plagued with a very bad algorithm, leading to a boring experience on the site. What I found out after extensive research is that a single click of a specific button is a definitive fix for that. In fact, if you click the subscribe button, you will not only join Automaton's family, but also fix the algorithm. As it turns out, the word subscribe is a loanword from the ancient Prostagma language, spoken in Prostagland many millennia ago, with sub meaning to fix, to improve, and scribe meaning the algorithm. Sadly, this is a dead language, and nowadays not many people are proficient in ancient Prostagma, leaving that useful button largely unnoticed. Our last way of smart implosion casting involves the implosion's best friend, the Argus. The Argus is a myth unit unlocked with the worship of Atlas, the same one that grants you the implosion. Historically, the Argus was never really useful. In the old game, its special attack consisted in spitting a blob of acid, instantly killing any unit who wasn't a hero or a titan. It was so bad that nobody really produced Arguses. Atlas was mainly picked for the implosion god power and the upgrade for your buildings. As it was, the Argus saw almost no use, because it was the only one-hit kill myth unit who did not have a ranged attack, and it almost never reached its target. Its niche use consisted in the single scenario where a Greek player spammed Colossi, In AOM Retold, the unit has been completely reworked.
What is this new devilry?
Its ability is the same Acid Blob, but now, instead of killing one unit, it creates an area where damage over time is applied. The concept is simple. The ability creates a pool of acid on the ground that lasts 4 seconds, dealing 5 divine damage per second. At the end, the pool explodes, dealing 50 divine damage for a total of 70. It is intended as an area denial attack, where the explosion deals enormous damage but is easily avoided by stepping out of the pool of acid before it explodes. We can clearly see that the pool has an health modifier flagged Divine and that possesses a self-destruct attack that deals 50 damage. All these values are modified to only 10% in case the receiving unit is a hero, or to 300% in case the receiving unit is a myth unit. It is now finally time to showcase how they can synergize with Implode, a trick I like to call the acid trap. So the Argo has now an area damage attack, capable of dealing enormous damage if the enemy doesn't run out of it. And the Implosion is a power that concentrates units in one spot, before sending them flying. Does anybody see where I'm going? Earlier on the video, we talked about how while the Implosion is pulling, the already pulled units are there, and they are just invisible and unselectable. If you go there with your Argo and use the ability on the sphere, you will add 70 divine damage to all normal units, which is roughly equivalent to prolonging the damaging phase by almost 2 seconds, and 210 damage to myth units, which is roughly equivalent to prolonging the damaging phase by more than 5 seconds. This is, however, usually not ideal. God powers are most efficient when surprise casted, meaning casting them as soon as you have them available. If the enemy sees you going mythic with Atlas, he will know that you can cast Implode, and begin enacting countermeasures, like splitting his army to halve your god power efficiency. Therefore, waiting for that Argos to arrive from your city's temple might not be the smart play that appears to be. There is, however, a way to fix this. If you are Gaia, you can destroy your temple and rebuild it in the front line, while advancing to Atlas. With Kronos, you can time shift the temple to the desired location. The Acid Trap is mostly a prerogative for Kronos, as the time shift ability and the double free Argo almost feel like intentional design to abuse this combination. If you begin time shifting your temple at roughly 85%, which is equal to a little after 10 o'clock in the circle bar above you, you can instantaneously cast Implosion before the Argos spawn. Therefore, they will not be pulled in and can freely move to the sphere to use the ability. It is incredibly strong and can be used to kill fire giants. You can also easily pair it with the fake escape. The problem with the acid trap is that it's tricky to get the timing right. If you're not willing to get your Argos pulled inside the sphere to have them move freely to cast the acid, you will need to aim for the acid to explode in a very brief time window, which is right after the invulnerability period, but before the units are thrown too far away. Here you can see one of the giants escaping one of the acid pools, because he was sent flying with a low, fast throw, managing to escape one pool just before it exploded. If you are willing to wait a few seconds to cast the god power in order for the Argos to spawn, you can include them in the Implosion and have their acid pool explode during the pulling phase, but by waiting you are granting your enemy some seconds to react to the Implode, as he will notice that you advance to the Mythic Age. In any case, in team game settings, the Implosion can be paired with other myth units that possess area damage special abilities, like Fire Giants, Satyrs or Trolls, for amazing results. In this scenario, imploding this group of Hippicon will result in 42 survivors. But the fire giants didn't like it one bit, and decided to change that to 0. In this other one, imploding this group of Hippicon will lead to 36 survivors, but this satyr named Philip, who had his son killed by a Hippius back in 2021, was not having it, and convinced the Spears to join him in his quest to exterminate all the horses in the world, and any human willing to ride one. Their contribution to the implode lowered the survivors from 36 to 4. Well, that will be all for today, and... oh, wait. An update just dropped. Did they nerf implode? Let me see. What? Longer cooldown? Lower escape range? Slower pulling speed to allow you to escape more easily? Seems like they finally nerfed implode. Except... they didn't? Wait, I know what you're thinking, but I think they did it wrong. Let's read the notes and hear me out. Cooldown is increased from 60 to 180 seconds. Nothing to say here, it was way too low. Escape range went from 40 to 35, the same radius as the one in which buildings are damaged. Nothing to say here too, and I like that now you can probe which buildings will be damaged by trying to escape it. Unit min-max pull time increased from 0.1, 0.15 to 0.15, 0.25. This means that the sphere will be slower at sucking up armies. There is a very big problem here. Haven't we just learned that prolonging the pulling phase will damage the units more? With the new implode, escaping is indeed possible, especially in team games where it is cast on a double army. But the implosion damage has increased by a lot. Imploding this group of 35 Hippicon before the balance patch would lead to all of them surviving. Doing so now will, not incredibly, lead to 29 survivors, who are way more damaged. Furthermore, in real scenarios, always allowing an army a chance to escape with these implosion mechanics means that you will not even need to perform the fake escape, as the enemy will do it himself every single time. To me, rather than a nerf, seems more like a little rework. The old implode sucked everything in and did great but not excessive damage to the units it pulled in. The new implode will spare some units from being damaged in very big armies, at the cost of the complete annihilation of the poor trapped soldiers. If they really deemed implode to be too strong, they should have just lowered the escape range and not touched the pulling speed, or changed the pulling speed and modify implosion damage with it to account for the longer pulling phase. But I think that the devs didn't really think implosion was too strong, therefore they provided a change that looks like a nerf, but is actually more of a rework. Aside from this, not really much changed of what I said in the rest of the video, and the abuse statics are a little stronger. The fake escape is now a little stronger because of the slower pulling time, and the sphere spends more time in the pulling phase, allowing you more room to pull shenanigans like an acid trap or any other area damage stuff. Thank you for reaching this far. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned to play better. If you like AOM like me, don't forget to subscribe. I also have a Discord community to talk about the game we all love, and a Twitch channel for live gameplays. Well, this is all for today. I will see you around.
There's nothing. Jeez. Look how good he was doing! It's just a straight down line. That is almost a 90-degree angle.
Iron weapons. Oh man. Oh, he just gonna doesn't know what. Oh, he's gonna get cast in the base. But yeah, Jesus Christ. No, well. Till the Stars Expire wasn't realizing what kind of stage of the game it is and that he has to be worried about it casting coming somewhere soon. So that's goodbye army. 30 versus 114. Yeah, that's a GG right there. Or is it? That's not gonna maybe be too hasty because he didn't have siege weapons right now from red. Because by the way also getting sucked in, but he's not gonna be getting that much damage. Wow. Holy crap. He was practically everything there. That was probably one of the best explosions I have seen. Jesus damn. He was like really almost everything there. Down to you can see 70 pop limit on the housings. Ha.